I think they're realizing that the wheels are coming off the bus.
Are affairs disqualifying? This one. Marital affairs.
To be clear, I think the Nazi tattoo is disqualifying. I think the idea that women are responsible for their own rapes is completely disqualifying, and he should be punched in the face. To be frank,
another night on Abby Phillips' show sparked debate online. This time featuring Joe Belli in a heated panel discussion where he defended Republican positions and criticized Democrats. In this segment, we're going to look at clips from that panel, including Joe Belli and other guests, and break down what was said and why it is getting attention. I'll also share my own thoughts on the discussion, so let's get into it together.
Tonight, does scandal matter anymore in American politics? Senate races in Maine and in Texas suggest that voters are willing to overlook what was once seen as disqualifying. We're learning Democrat Graham Plattner reportedly shared sexually explicit messages with multiple women in the early days of his marriage. His wife flagged the text to a campaign aide last year as a potential liability for him. Plattner has faced significant controversy over a series of offensive online posts that he has since apologized for, and for a tattoo widely recognized as a Nazi symbol that he has since covered up. Meanwhile, in Texas, as Republicans accuse Democratic State Senator James Tallarico of being a vegan, the man Donald Trump is endorsing, Ken Paxton, has faced fraud charges, 16 articles of impeachment, accusing him of corruption and bribery and allegations of infidelity. Paxton's criminal charges ended in a pretrial agreement, and he was ultimately acquitted in his impeachment proceedings following a 2-week trial. Joe, let's start with you. You just wrote this about.
Joe. You know all about it.
Yeah, you know about bribery, corruption.
Not you, Joe. The other Joe.
Okay, which one?
That's right. This one.
Joe, let's go to you.
You wrote a book called Life of the Party, How the Democrats Lost America's Trust and How They Can Win It Back. What is your take on this Graham Plattner situation and the fact that Democrats are doing what I would argue maybe Republicans have been doing since 2016 and just saying, they're shrugging.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, right? And I'll withhold my comments about the Republican Party speaking from the high ground of moral clarity, which I don't believe that they do, considering the candidates that are running this cycle under the Republican banner. But I want to speak specifically to the Democratic Party. And look, because of last cycle and the ones leading up to, I think the bar for entry, the Democratic Party, has been placed so low because we put it there. Democrats right now just want a candidate who can, speak plain English and communicate to voters and be authentic and talk about issues that resonate with people. Not, these obtuse issues like whether it be save democracy and so vague. They want actual things that can drive down the cost of price and make life affordable and just speak like a normal American and enter Graham Plattner. And so I think he's enjoyed a lot of that success, mainly as a Democrat because he doesn't sound like a Democrat. He doesn't look like a Democrat. And I think that says a lot about where the party currently is right now.
But is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Well, because when you put the bar low, then anybody can jump over.
It needs a reset. It needs people, though, who can speak normally and not talk down to people and not talk at them or above them, but can communicate with voters and then can speak to the issues themselves. And again, it's been reset, of course, but we're going through that process right now, considering everything the Democratic Party came through in 2024 with Biden and then Harris.
But I think we have lost the plot on authenticity. I think Graham Plattner is cosplaying working class. He wears it like a Halloween costume, and that has been placed on him by the same people who have run a lot of progressive candidates across the nation. In this pursuit of getting to know the everyman, we keep picking these people who I think show the worst parts of society. If I am to believe that Graham Plattner can relate to everyday Americans, then that means I am to believe that everyday Americans are okay with Nazi tattoos because they get them accidentally when they're drunk, or because they served in the military, they have very regressive views on race and on gender. I just cannot accept the fact that to gain the working class, we have to dress up people who show the lowest of our values.
It does speak to how hungry Democrats are for new blood, though.
Thank you. We are anti-establishment people.
Governor Janet Mills is a very credible person. Governor Janet Mills is very credible, and she lost.
Right.
New leadership.
This is just
also someone under 50.
Voters have a say in this. And if you look at the numbers, Graham Plattner, he has only gotten more popular, since the controversy, since the tattoo, since all of it. That's a real thing. And then, down in Texas, where Ken Paxton was going up against John Cornyn, all of the dirt is out there on Ken Paxton. And I was looking at some favorability and unfavorability numbers for the two of them, Paxton and Cornyn. And voters are just as favorable toward Paxton as they are to Cornyn. They are not the same. But voters don't seem to care about the scandals.
Well, I would be very clear. They're not the same. Ken Paxton was acquitted at his trial in the Senate of the crimes he was accused of.
But his wife has accused him of things that has led her to seek a divorce on biblical grounds. So,
and I am sure we're going to hear. I'm sure we're going to hear all about it.
There's a lot of corruption, but there's a lot of personal issues too with him.
But just to be clear, on the corruption stuff, that he was impeached by the Texas House, he was acquitted by the Texas Senate. So I think we should be clear about that. That is not the same as someone who has exhibited a pattern over 20 years. I mean, it's not just the Nazi tattoo.
Pattern
it's the
prosecuting.
It's not just the Nazi. It's the belief that women are responsible for their own. I mean, that's appalling and absurd. To have someone believe that women are somehow responsible for being. To have people who obviously, sexually message their women while they're married, like these are all bad things, and they just keep getting worse with Graham Plattner. And I think Democrats, as you've seen, a couple of them make pretty strong statements against him. I think they're realizing that the wheels are coming off the bus.
Are affairs disqualifying? This one. Marital affairs.
To be clear, I think the Nazi tattoo is disqualifying. I think the idea that women are responsible for their own is completely disqualifying, and he should be punched in the face, to be frank with you. I mean, that's an appalling thing to say. I think that's different from someone who's accused of bribery and was acquitted. I think that's someone who has issues with his wife that we're going to all hear. We are going to hear all about Ken Paxton's divorce as the trial, I believe, even starts while he's campaigning. It's going to be.
Some Republicans, like Joe Belli, are presented as if they hold the moral high ground in these discussions, but critics strongly disagree and argue that this position does not match the facts. They point to Donald Trump's personal history, business record, and political conduct as evidence of serious ethical concerns, and they argue that it becomes difficult for his supporters to claim moral authority while defending him. From this perspective, the wider point is that claims about morality and politics often depend on which side someone supports, rather than on a consistent standard applied to everyone. If Donald Trump had not been such a central figure in these controversies, critics argue that many of Joe Belli's points would not carry the same weight, especially given the frequency of Trump's own controversial statements and behavior. The discussion then shifts to the idea that a large portion of voters are increasingly less focused on scandals and more focused on whether a candidate can improve their lives. In that sense, some believe that issues like personal affairs matter less to the public unless they involve illegal activity. The argument also highlights what critics see as inconsistency in political messaging, where some Republicans are accused of shaming Democrats over personal scandals while overlooking similar issues within their own party, leading to claims of double standards in how morality is applied in politics.
Graham Plattner's scandal is over sexting with staffers. Let me just read. I have to read this statement because this is from his wife. His wife told CNN and reporters, I confided deeply personal details about my marriage to someone who I considered a friend. In the months since, I've had to watch as she spreads malicious gossip to anyone who would take her call. I trusted this person with the most private chapter of our lives, the early days of our marriage before any campaign was on our mind, and I'm deeply hurt by her betrayal and invasion of our privacy. I know who Graham is. I know the man that I married and the husband that he has been to me on the best and worst days of my life. That hasn't changed, and it won't. That is what his wife says. But the piece of this is that it's adding to many things. But our voters sort of just don't care about, I mean, and maybe I should go further back because, Donald Trump has cheated allegedly on his spouses before. He's been divorced several times. There was also Bill Clinton. Are we done with this stuff? Do personal mistakes not matter in politics?
Sadly, I mean, I'm nostalgic for a time when Bush getting a DUI or Obama smoking weed was shocking and led the news for a couple weeks. And sadly, I think we're at a point in American politics where it isn't disqualifying. And it's funny, I was kind of surprised to see the reaction from folks like Cory Booker now sort of raising questions about support for Graham Plattner in light of these affairs, because frankly, adultery and infidelity now seems so ubiquitous in American politics. So to me, that wasn't even the most shocking thing. I think Democrats, though, now are trying to backpedal a little bit because they realize it's this constant drip, drip, drip. It wasn't just the Totenkopf tattoo. It wasn't just the basically making fun of veterans for getting shot at. It wasn't the sexual acts in porta potty. It's continuing to drip, drip, drip. And so I think they're kind of aware that maybe they've made this Faustian bargain. And bear in mind, I think for so long they tried to say, oh, we have the moral high ground because Donald Trump. That was their argument for everything. And so now they've somehow embraced somebody with a Nazi tattoo. I mean, it's kind of beyond the pale. Yeah. And I would also note too, but this is all in the name of getting out Susan Collins, who is the most moderate Republican in the Senate. It's a really tough situation for them to say, oh yeah, elect this guy with the Nazi tattoo to beat out Susan Collins.
Right. These personal and professional failings by both of these bad men are not disqualifying, but they might lose them the election. It might be enough, because not everyone cares that they're allegedly corrupt and allegedly taking bribe. It is a pattern with Paxton, by the way, a lot of different accusations. But some people do. And that could be the difference in these tight races. And they didn't have to choose these people who have these problematic records. And I'll just say one last thing. As someone, maybe the only tattooed person on the panel, that you know what your tattoo is, okay?
Yeah.
No, I have 2 tattoos. I know exactly what they mean, okay? Because they're tattooed on my body. And if I got drunk and got something tattooed, I wouldn't keep it for 15 years without checking it out. You know, you could Google it now. You do a Google image. 15 years, 17 years later, I don't buy it. I think people know what their tattoos are. I'm here to tell you.
Now I want to know what your tattoos are.
Show us during the break. It's a different show.
Break.
Next for us.
In the earlier part of the segment, Abby Phillips noted that some Republicans were making unusual criticisms about Talerico, including framing something as minor as dietary choices like being vegan as if it were a negative trait, which critics argue is not a serious or meaningful political attack. The discussion then shifted to broader points about voter expectations, with Joe Cunningham suggesting that many Democratic voters are increasingly drawn to politicians who feel authentic rather than overly scripted or overly political. He argued that people are tired of candidates who seem artificial and prefer those who appear more genuine in their communication and personality. There are definitely some Democrats who are widely seen as authentic, such as Bernie Sanders, who many consider one of the most genuine political voices, even though he is from an older generation. Others point to figures like AOC and Ro Khanna as examples of politicians who come across as more real and relatable to their supporters. The broader point being made is that many voters today, especially Democrats and independents, are increasingly valuing authenticity over polished political messaging. At the same time, there is an argument that some MAGA voters are less concerned about controversies and more focused on outcomes they believe benefit them, even if scandals are involved. This leads into a bigger question about whether politics has moved beyond scandals altogether, with some people now prioritizing results over personal behavior.